Okay, hey everybody, welcome to the Education of a Weaponized Man podcast. It's Thursday night. Here I am with Coach Dustin. Coach Brad is running a little bit late. He may be able to join us, although we might not see him tonight, but we're going to keep an open mind. So welcome Dustin, and again, welcome everybody, all the protectors that are listening and tuning in tonight. Listen, tonight we're going to cut away to the intro, but I'm going to set it up here a little bit. Tonight I want to explain to you, and I want to get Dustin's visceral feedback on this as usual, but why I'm all about losing. And that's a very interesting thing, right? Because most people, obviously, nobody wants to lose, especially when it comes to violence. We can't afford to lose. But I am all about losing, but it is something that I had to learn because I'm competitive by nature, and it definitely wasn't in my nature in the beginning. I wanted to win. I hated fucking losing. But now, and for the past, 3 decades, I've been all about losing. So back in 30 seconds, stick with us. Hey, everybody. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Greg LeBoeuf, and I'm sharing insights for how I went from the victim of a brutal attempted murder to weaponizing my mind and body, mastering the tool of violence so that I can protect myself and my family from violent criminal assault, and how for the past 30 years, I've been helping good people just like you do the same. Welcome to the Education of a Weaponized Man podcast. Okay, so listen, why am I all about losing? I said that for the past 3 decades I've been all about losing, but I had to learn that. I was definitely not about losing. Matter of fact, like most people, especially most men, when we start something, again, I had a martial arts background, so did you, Dustin, but when I first started it, I started it because I wanted to win, right? If somebody attacked me and I found my, self needing to defend my life or someone I cared about, I wanted to win. I was a sparring partner for 2 professional fighters, and they definitely have the mindset of wanting to win. So I too wanted to win. So it's so counterintuitive in a way that you think about all of your training is to be able to win, come out on top, survive, whatever term you want to put to that. But very early on, my instructors really had to change my perception on this. And I'll just kind of state my first view of it, and then Dustin, you can kind of throw in your visceral response. But we all typically know that losing is contrast. Losing provides contrast to us, right? Losing shows us where our weaknesses might be. Losing, builds a certain type of just fortitude because, when you lose, obviously it sucks and it's negative feedback, but it's what do you do with that feedback? They'll talk about a true champion isn't just the guy that wins the belt. It's the guy that, loses the belt and then has to decide what type of champ, you know what I mean? Like, can he come back from that? So we all, I think, to a visceral or to a certain degree, understand how losing benefits us. But I'm going to go deeper tonight because, as I discovered, you have to actually get really fucking serious about losing. Matter of fact, the analogy I would use is you got to become a professional loser. And I'll explain more in a second, but just give me your visceral thoughts, Dustin, on how losing has impacted your training or what you think about what I'm saying about becoming a professional loser.
Yeah, it's interesting because as you started talking, I was like, wow, this could really probably go a whole bunch of different ways. And obviously I never know exactly, what point you're really wanting to drive home for the people listening and watching. And this one, felt kind of really vague. Like just, man, I don't know. Like sometimes I can really kind of predict like, oh, I know where he's going to go with this, I think. But this one I think could be really broad. I think people could learn a lot from a concept like this in a lot of different ways. But that all being said, the thing that hit me and just trying to what does he mean? What is he going after here? The one thing that hit me, and I think we talked about this, it might have been on the podcast not that long ago. I don't know. We talk about this stuff so often, it's hard to keep track. But the thing that hit me was that concept of like, what's going to get you killed the quickest? We did cover that, I think, 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, 100%. Yep.
And so, that hit me for sure as, that this could definitely tie into that. And again, it may not at all be what you wanted to talk about, but as far as visceral reaction, that was the first thing that hit me is like, what does it mean to lose? Well, or why would I benefit from losing? Why would I want to become a professional loser in what I do? And it's like, well, because that's also the same as figuring out like, well, yeah, what is going to get me killed the quickest? Where am I the weakest? Well, I need to lose at something to figure out what that is. And therefore it can become your focus for getting better and improving. So that was my initial thought.
Perfect. Yeah, and you're right on one of the core concepts. And I think one of the most important things for me in this podcast is to just really be simple and concise. Because again, we can go a lot of different directions and we can peel back a lot of layers. But I really want people to walk away with something of value here. And so I'm going to start with what I think is my very best point. And if I was just to ask you, for example, like, your training and weaponizing and everything that you're dedicating your life to is all for one of the darkest and most critical moments a human being can face. And that moment is when another member of our own species, another human being, decides to debase, dehumanize you and is willing to take your life. And it doesn't matter if that's intentional or if it's unintentional. It's a moment of, they freak out, they lose their shit, they black. I don't give a fuck what it is, intentional or not. It is your life that they're willing to destroy, that they're playing with. So to me, it is the highest stakes poker. So we're talking about violence, and I don't have a word to put. You can't call it the game. It's not the game that we're playing because it's not a fucking game. And it's a crisis, it's an event, but that softens it too much. It is a toxic, corrosive, and septic moment when you are face to face in the context of one human being or many human beings attempting to murder you or other innocent people or people that you love. That's where the rubber hits the road. That's what we're talking about. So if that is the event, that the crucible event, we call it our righteous fight. That is the righteous moment that has found you. So that means that everything that we are doing, it doesn't matter if that righteous moment doesn't find you for 10 years, 15 years, 30 years of your life, or it happens to you a day from now. When that moment hits, and this is the interesting thing, you can't afford to lose. Now, we can rationalize and accept we might lose, but losing means you're dead. So if you cannot afford to lose, you can't have a bad day. You got to try to inoculate yourself. You got to try to be bulletproof as much as you possibly can. And then there's always the fog of fucking war. There's always the uncontrollable, the unknowable, the unforeseeable. There's always an element of Murphy's Law that exists, and we accept that. And we don't let that deter us from being as prepared as possible. So I just want people to understand that we have to think and say, listen, there is this crucible moment, this righteous fight, life and death, highest stakes poker. And then what you have to do is come back and you have to recognize something. Everything else that you do outside of that crucible, righteous life and death event, everything else is training. And I'm just going to give you a quick contrast, because in competition, if you are a martial artist, if you're an athlete and you compete, your crucible pinnacle thing you're training for is an event. It is manufactured. And that's, and a lot of people, I don't know if they've ever attached the word, it's a manufactured event. It's man-made. You can go back and everyone's like, oh, it's like, gladiators of old, and they fought in the arena and they were warriors. Yes, it was manufactured. They didn't just happen upon each other and tens of thousands of people happened to be standing around and decided to watch. It's manufactured. So is it violent? Was it aggressive? All that yes, of course. In combat sports today, is it aggressive? Yes, of course it's aggressive. Are there elements of violence in it? Well, that's a whole other discussion. Let's just say, yeah, okay, there is some, but most of it is very high levels of aggression. Why? Because the goal is not to injure. We don't have UFC cage matches where guys go in there with knives. And, where some listen, we're going to fight to the death here, or you're going to fight till somebody, the champion, the guy that won, he'll never fight again. He's seriously maimed. The other guy's fucking dead. But the champion lost an eye, got stabbed in his kidney, collapsed a lung. He'll never be the same person again, but he won. It's not violence, it's aggression. Okay, so to stick to my point of the fact that if in competition, you say, I have competition. Well, competition, you can enter into the competition and you can do what? You can lose. And what does that loss contribute to?
Well, it'll contribute to your future training, I would hope. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
to your
I guess
growth.
it depends on your character, I suppose.
Yeah,
Some people would lose, and that would be the end of it. They'd call it a career, and they'd just be done
sure.
if they don't have
Yeah.
the will and the fortitude to drive on. But
100%.
one would hope that most of them are the opposite, and then it would then just supercharge their training and their motivation and everything to make them want to train that much harder to come back and get the guy when they have their rematch, or just the next person on their their fight schedule, whatever it happens to be. But
yeah. See, let's amplify that moment. You can have an individual, because let's go back, right? You get into the martial arts or the combative arts, but you're training, you're practicing, you're learning, you're growing, and then you go into a competition, and it might be just something local or regional, but you go into this, and you lose. And so you're like, but that's okay. I'm just learning. It was just this local fun thing or this interclub tournament or whatever it was. And so you go back and you grow. You have no expectations of winning because you're like, I'm brand new to this, never done this before. So it's easy to kind of just go, well, that sucks and I hate losing, but that was good for my growth. Like it's just a fun thing that I'm doing. So you get this interjection of loss, right? Or failure. Now you might even win, but yet you go, well, shit, I lost, that guy got me on a few different moves or a few different things. He didn't beat me overall, but like I beat him on points, whatever. But you can have micro failures and micro losses within the battle and still come out winning. But the point is, there is this win-lose, and it's okay to lose in a certain way, right? But you work and you train, and then you get to this, what would be a crucible experience where you say, okay, well now, this is a much bigger competition for me, or a much bigger fight for me, or whatever it is, and you can lose. And if you lose, like you said, for some people, it's demoralizing, like they're done. Now, they might say, well, I've lost 3 fights in a row. Any aspirations they had to go on to become a professional fighter, it's going to be very hard to overcome that. It's tough to become a pro fighter when you've lost your first 3, 4, 5 professional fights, or even amateur fights, and wanting to turn pro. You don't have much of a future in there. And you alluded to the whole, how it demoralizes people. Like, I've been around a lot of combat athletes over the years, and losing, it's very tough mentally and emotionally. It's very hard on the self-image to overcome it. Now, early on, it's easier because you go, well, I am nobody. I have no experience. I have nothing to lose. And so losing is a little bit easier. But as you start to gain skill and talent and higher belt levels or higher certification levels, you have more at stake. You have your reputation. You have your perceived self-image and quality and all that kind of stuff. I'm really building this up because this is a very important point. You can lose, and losing can destroy people. It can make them quit. It can make them lose interest, all this type of stuff. But here's the thing. When you're training for violence, you cannot wait for your crucible righteous fight to lose. Like, you can't lose there. If you lose, somebody is probably dead or severely injured. You, your loved ones, right? Wife, child. You lost. The bad guys don't stop and go, well, he tapped out, or well, his corner threw in the towel. Oh, he's in. The ref's going to come in and check him out. Like, there is none of that shit. So what that means is that everything you do before your righteous fight is training, and in that training, you have to lose from day one. You have to lose. You have to lose big. You have to lose hard. You have to lose fast, and you have to lose repetitively. You have to lose all the fucking time. And this is a very interesting concept. But as a coach who's done this for 30 years, the lesson that I learned is my instructors from the very beginning never used success as the carrot to inspire me to move forward in my training. Do you get what I mean? Like, we don't have belts. We don't have that stuff. They never used like, oh, Greg, you're getting so good. Oh my God, look at your improvement. Oh, you can do this now. Oh, show me these 10 moves, Greg. And then I'm going to give you a little stripe, and you can tattoo that on your balls if you want. And that means something to you. They never used the carrot to entice me. In fact, what they always did was they put a loss onto me every time and then said, what do you think of that? What do you think? How did that fucking feel? You know, how did that fucking happen? How did I get you in that shit? How did I get you? That was pathetic. That was weak. And yet I got you. I beat you. I destroyed you. Like I caught you on the blind side with that. And yes, that kind of ties in a little bit to, like you said, what's going to get me killed the quickest. But this is a very different angle on that take. Because where the coaching came in, and this is very powerful, and then I'm going to let you throw your insights into this. They reframed what it meant to lose for me. They forced loss on me every single time. Matter of fact, I remember Paul telling me every time training is about fucking losing. Training is about failing. Every day you come in, you should be asking yourself, what will make me fail today? Kind of like the question, you know, what's the thing that's going to get me killed the quickest? But you go deeper on that and say, how can I lose today? A good coach looks at you and goes, how do I beat this guy today? Like, how do I make sure that he is losing today? But to do that, you have to reframe losing. And what got me is that I had no problem losing because this was not the righteous fight. And if I didn't want to lose in my righteous crucible moment where losing meant dying or someone I loved being murdered, if I didn't want to lose there, then I was okay with losing right here. Every single fucking time. It never demoralized me. And I'm sorry, Dustin, I'm hogging this, so you're going to probably have a lot of thoughts to throw at me. I just want to throw one analogy in here. Of all the different guys that I've met that were special forces, okay, American guys that were SEAL teams or SWAT guys, FBI guys, CIA guys, Canadian Forces guys, JTF2 operators, CSOR operators, Tier 1 operators that have been in combat. Here's the thing that a lot of people, I think, don't know about them. They don't want you to praise them. They don't want training that showcases what they're good at. They don't want feedback off what they succeeded at. They want you to tell them what the fuck they failed at, because it doesn't do to them what it does to everybody else. If you have somebody do something and you say, hey, listen, this part of it was great, this part of it was great. Man, when you did this, that was so impressive. You're really good. You know, if I was going to say anything to you, I would say maybe you could work on this. That is not acceptable in their culture. They're like, stop, I don't need you to blow smoke at me. I don't need you to stroke my fucking feathers. I need you to tell me what the fuck I did wrong or what the fuck I can improve on. How did I fail? How did I fucking lose? Give me the feedback so I can course correct and drive on. I need to get fucking better. And why are Tier 1 operators, why are they that way? Why is that mentality part of their culture?
Because they can't afford to lose.
Because they can't afford to lose.
Yeah, they're in the same position as we are.
Exactly.
They're dealing in life and death, and they understand that if I screw up and I lose, I'm dead, or worse for them, probably their teammate is dead.
Yes.
Right? That's the ultimate cost. They can't afford to pay it.
That's right. And that right there, that's it. We could end this podcast right now. I mean, we're going to rehash this and beat this a lot more because I want to anchor this in people, but that is it. If nothing else, press fucking pause on this or shut this off, and you need to spend time, you need to think that over and really unpack that and let that sink in. Men that are training to go to fucking war. But it's not just their life, right? They're not just training to protect themselves. They're going into the fucking worst of conditions, and they're going with the man to the left and right of them, their brothers. They're tighter knit than most fucking families, and they know the pressure on them is that if they make a mistake, if they miss something, if they fail, if they have a bad fucking day, you know what the worst thing is? Like you just said, it's not them that's going to die. It's their buddy that's going to fucking die. And they're going to live with that for the rest of their fucking lives. And shit is happening with imperfect information in fractions of a second, and it's fucking life and death for everybody that's on scene. You get what I mean? And so their training does not stroke egos. Their training, their vocabulary when they give each other feedback is not harsh. They're not beating each other fucking down with it. They have a mindset, a culture, and a vocabulary that is about critical thinking, critical feedback, finding what they're failing at, being okay with failing, and fucking doing it again, and doing it again, and doing it again until they can't say shit about you. And then what they do when you go that, you come out of something and you have that quote unquote, excellent run, or you have a solid run or a perfect run, they're just going to rack it up again, do it again. And guess what they're going to do? The feeders, the instructors, the coaches, the staff, they're going to fucking turn up the flame. They're going to fucking poke a hole in what you just did. Why? Not because they're trying to demoralize you, but their development is not being graded on a win-loss column. So their training, their feedback, their culture is about dirt diving shit, losing, breaking shit down until you can do whatever, you can mutate it any way you want, and they fucking adapt and overcome. The Monicums, right? The only easy day was yesterday. Right? You know what I mean? Like it's the only easy day was yesterday. That day's done. Today ain't easy. And well, I'm going to let you jump in here, Dustin, because I'll just keep going on a tangent with it. But because I think, honestly, like, I'm explaining it. I think where you can offer the greatest value to people is you have lived this. You know what I mean? You've been doing this for over, 22, 23, 20, maybe 20, coming on 24 years. And from day, like, true or false, you share your experience and how this culture of losing and becoming a professional loser has been built in, and how it's affected you and how you've adapted to it and everything else.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Like, I was thinking about that as you were talking, and it's like, I think you take anybody who's been around for a long time in doing this, whether it's 10 years or 15 years or 20 years or whatever, and it's like everybody for sure has this in common. This quality that we're talking about, this need to always be losing. Do you know what I mean? Because people who didn't have that coming in, or who couldn't learn it, embrace it, want to live it, they don't last. They'll be around for 2-3 years, and then they lose interest, or something else piques their interest, and then they move on and they go do other things. But anybody who's been around, they all want to train this way, because like you said, you constantly come in going like, I desperately want to be better. And the only way to do that is if you tell me what I'm screwing up, what's not working, what could be better. Like, tell me. If you don't tell me that, I can't get better. So I'm wasting my time. So we're all just like constantly looking for that aspect, especially when we do like the prolonged intense exposure, the team weekends. You spend 3 days going under the hood on things. Is like, well, why would you do that? Well, only because you're looking to figure out, how can I lose, right? So it's kind of built into I think both the culture, the mindset, but also the actual training tempo of what we do. We don't just do the 1 hour twice a week and that's all. It's like, yeah, we do that a ton. But then we also take these chunks of time and just absolutely deep dive things, because it's the only way sometimes to figure out how can I lose. We need to spend some time there, especially when you're around for a long time. Yeah. The longer you're around, the harder it is sometimes to see where it is that you could lose. And so that's how you figure it out and get it pointed out to you. And the other point I was going to make, and this goes back 10 minutes in the conversation, but I remember, like, I was fortunate enough, God, how long ago, to be asked to be one of your personal training partners, right? Mm-hmm. And I jumped on it. And it was interesting because, in the beginning, me and my brother, Ryan, we joked about this all the time because we'd both come in together. And you'd kind of always just be like, wonder how today's going to go. And some days you'd show up and the mood might be really light and chit-chatty, and you'd train, it'd be good, and you'd have growth. And then there'd be days you'd come in and it would be very different. The mood in the room was very different. You're like, oh, okay. We're warming up in complete staging and complete silence today. And like, I know how this is going to go. And there's that part of you that was always like, damn, like, I'm going to have to pay a small price for being here. Yeah. But there's absolutely going to be something really big that's going to come from it in the 5 minutes after we're done. Because that's one thing that you did for us. You still do it. Your instructors did for you, is like, you kind of had to experience something first, which is the lose. Here's how you lose. I'm going to do this to you for an hour and a half. And I'm going to see it. Maybe you'll figure it out. Maybe you'll problem solve it. If you do, good for you. But if you don't, I'm going to just keep taxing you on it. But then when it's all said and done, I'll be the first, I'll be the first one to tell you, here's what I did. Here's how I did it. This is what you need to do to make sure it doesn't ever happen again. But without that experience, without that, we'll call it discomfort up front, I think it's not that you can't learn the lesson, but you certainly can't learn it as deep, and you absolutely can't retain it as long. I think you tend to get that in one ear, out the other ear. Even if you think it's great information, you're like, oh, this is awesome, this makes total sense. But when you don't have that tangible experience to anchor it, it doesn't stick. And so that was something that hit me, and I think it's a very important part of what we do, because we still do that today. And of course, it's always, what would it be called? Like relative to where the other person is at. Do you know what I mean? But there has to be that element to it. You always have to be taxing people a little bit and pushing them, whether it's physically, mentally, central nervous system, whatever. But you have to push them a little bit so that way they can actually learn it deeper. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I got one other question I want to ask you, but I'm going to ask you some more. I'm going to explain this a little bit of what you just said, or I'm going to ask you a question of this. What you're talking about is like, I think of it this way: the loss is real. When I was training, right? When again, the first decade of my training, like 10 years you're talking about. And this started for me in 1993, 94. And so my instructors have been training with the Gracies, Rickson Gracie, for 3 years at that point. No one knew who Gracies were. No one knew jiu-jitsu. They were doing privates with Rickson in his garage. They'd pay for an hour private, and Rickson wouldn't let him leave for 4 or 5 hours because he had nobody else to train with. So I got exposed to the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, or Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, in 1993. And I'll tell you one thing, from 1993 till probably 2003, maybe 2002, a decade, close to it, I did nothing but tap out. I could come back to Canada and tap out a couple of my students, but that wasn't me tapping anybody out. I lost for a decade. Why? Because my instructors were ruthless about this. They were training this, doing privates with Rickson. It was training with guys like Mark Eckert and Rombalikis and guys at the Inosanto Academy and stuff, doing shoot wrestling, or Yuri Nakamura and stuff. I just got tapped out. And you think, Jesus, how shitty are you that you're getting tapped out for a fucking decade? You couldn't catch a break, and just fucking by dumb luck you should have fell into something? No, because I never wrestled with students. I wrestled with the teachers. You get what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like when I was wrestling, with like Paul Vunick, I was wrestling with Paul Vunick. I was wrestling with Tom Cruise. I was wrestling with Ron Baliki. I was wrestling, Eric Paulson. I got to roll with a few times. I was wrestling. These guys were the pioneers. These guys were so far ahead of me, but that's who I rolled with. I never gave a shit. I wasn't demoralized. But here's the thing. They would do something to me. They would fuck me up. Just tap me out a million ways from Sunday. Then they would go at the end of it when they were done. And I never got frustrated. It was fucking wicked. It was just, let's go again. And they would try to coach a bit, but it's like they'd say, here's what I did. Here's how I was doing it. And here's how you fix it. Here's what you need to do. But you see, it wasn't a teaching session. I never did technical drills. I fucking rolled with them. If they showed me techniques, they showed it by doing it to me and explain it. Oh, look, see when you're doing this, I'm pushing down this, you're trying to do that, I'm doing this. And it was like you're learning as you're getting beat the whole time. But here's the fun part. Here's what I did. Here's how I did it. Here's what you can do to stop it. I'll see you fucking tomorrow, or I'll see you in 3 days. When you left there, you're like, I just got my ass handed to me for 3 fucking hours. They told me what they did. They told me how they fucking did it, and they told me how to fix it. And now 3 days later, it's a fucking rematch. Yeah. And I'd come in and I would work what they taught me. I'd work the counters. And you know what they would do? They'd go, hey, that was really good. They would go to the next thing. They go, hey, you did much better on that. I only got your neck 50 times. Last time, 3 days ago, I got your neck 200 times. What, really good. But while you were defending your neck, you kept giving up your arm, or you kept giving up your leg. So now I ankle locked you 500 times. You know what I mean? It's like, but every time the loss was real. And that's what you're talking about. Like over the years, like the loss is fucking real. It's not just training where you're like, just training.
Well, and I think I'll throw one point in too, because I think if you're training with the right type of people, you will always lose to them. Yeah. Because they are constantly growing. Yeah. Right? Like if you're catching your instructor, something's wrong. Something's wrong with your instructor, your coach, because they've stopped growing and you're catching them. And that's a problem. Yeah. Because what are you going to do when you surpass them? Yeah. Yeah. You know what I mean? You can be an innovator. You can figure it out for yourself, but it's going to be a lot tougher. Yeah. And I think that's something in what we do and what your instructors did is it was this. It was like it's constantly going like this.
Yeah.
So you're never quite catching them because they're always moving up.
Yeah, they're growing.
And like you were saying, it's, you know, if they teach you how to solve one thing, they're going to tax you on the next thing.
Yeah.
And if they don't know it yet, they're going to, you being able to do it is what's going to force them to figure it out.
Yeah. And
You know what I
that's
mean?
the
So it's
thing
just
with this.
the evolution of it.
Yeah.
But
And this is the thing, because there's a couple caveats here that I want to be very clear on. One, as an instructor, your goal is to get your students as good as you or surpass you, like 100%. If you're doing good training, they're going to get as good as you or they're going to surpass you in many, many ways. But what Dustin's talking about is the fact that they are not stationary. They are also growing. So the way it was always put to me, and this is what my goal was from the beginning, and this is going to circle back to my big question that I want to ask you, but I never wanted to beat them because they were growing. Like, I mean, probably in the beginning, I thought, geez, I want to be as good as him. I'd like to beat him someday. Like, imagine getting that good. But they were always training, and they had time on their side. They were, a decade ahead of me in training. But what happened was I realized that, Paul used to say to me, just because I'm tough doesn't mean you can't be too. And I really had to unpack that over the years because it was like, well, you're better than me. And he's like, yeah, just because I'm better than you now or tougher than you now doesn't mean you can't be tough. Doesn't mean you can't be fucking good. Just because I'm world class doesn't mean you can't be world class. And then it hit me. What a good instructor does is he was like, listen, I'm going to train you. They kept no secrets. They shared everything. They were telling me, here's how you beat me. Because they wanted me coming for them. They wanted me to try to get them to lose to me. Right? They wanted that, but it was never a competitive thing. It was like, yes, that was the culture we had. They beat me. They never gave me shit. They didn't give me a softball armbar. I didn't need that shit. Like, you don't need that if you've got the right mindset. You don't need them to give you a leg lock and tap out and be like, oh, good job. Like, I didn't need that shit. I knew I was getting better because I was lasting longer. I knew I was getting better because I was getting to better positions. I was holding base better. I didn't give a fuck about, what I mean? You don't need the end result. But as we got better, there came a point, and it took a decade, there came a point when I realized I was playing in the same league as them. Mm-hmm. I'm not comparing myself to them, but I was playing in the same league. Listen, if you play in the NHL, you're one of only a few hundred people that play in the NHL. You might not be the Gretzky of the NHL, but you're playing there. And there'll be a lot of people talk a lot of shit. You're the worst guy in the fucking... You're playing there. And my goal very quickly became to be, I wanted to be in what I do in my area of specialty. I wanted to be playing in that league. And I have the utmost respect for the guys that have been training for 40, 50, 60 years. They've taken care of their bodies. They're like, yeah, on some levels, in some areas, maybe I'm better, maybe I'm not. You know what I mean? But they're fucking growing. They are training. They didn't hit a point where they go, well, now I'm too old to spar. I'm too old to roll. I'm too old to swing stick. I'm too old to night spar. I'm too old to do scenarios. Oh, my knees are gone. My back's gone. This and gone. The guys that I train with, that's not them. They're moving into 60s and 70s and they're still fucking doing it. They have to adapt a few things, but that doesn't mean nothing. You know what I mean? They're still out there fucking being like, I'm training every day. I'm finding the loss, and I'm getting fucking better. And if you beat them on something and you do the same thing, here's what I did. Here's how I did it. Here's how you beat me. Here's how you counter that. And hopefully, what people start to see right now is the only people you do that with is the people you fucking trust and respect. That's tribe. Okay, and I'll push this back to the conversation. How do you separate constantly physically losing, like getting tapped out for a decade? And there'd be lots of people that can't understand that. Be like, you're fucking horseshit if you got tapped out. Yeah, well, I didn't wrestle other white belts and blue belts. There was no belts. I wrestled, guys that were training with Rickson. These were Rickson's training partners. That's who I wrestled. Of course, I lost him every time. But why would I want to wrestle anybody else? So that I can stroke my ego? You know what I mean? That I wanted to be with the very best guys. But here's the thing. How do you separate always physically losing from your self-image? And not think of yourself as a fucking loser? Because in the special forces, they can take criticism. They don't ever get, no one comes out of a training op where everybody's going, wow, you're impressive, you did great. They're coming out of it and they're telling you, I don't care how good you did, I don't care how high a level you're at, there's room for improvement and here's what you fucked up on. Here's where you need to dial your shit in. And they gave constructive feedback. Do this more, do that more, do this more, go. You know what I mean? So how do you separate those two things? For you over the years, how have you become a professional loser in training and yet not attach that to your self-image and see yourself as like confident and fucking dominant and bulletproof and all the other things you need to go out there, punch in and go to fucking work and do what needs to be done and fucking come home at the end of the night?
Yeah, I think in the beginning it's faith. Do you know what I mean? Like when you first start training something, I first started training with you, years ago. In the beginning, it starts out as faith because, you meet, like I met you, and the biggest thing for me was a perception shift. Do you know what I mean? You presented violence to me in a way that I'd never thought about it, didn't really understand it, didn't really realize what was potentially out there. And the second my perception shifted, I was like, well, I need to do this. I need to do what he's doing. And so in the beginning, it was like, well, I need to have faith that he knows how to get that to me, how to transfer that knowledge to me, how to get me there. So what started as faith initially, then I think really quickly shifts into belief. Because once you believe in the process that we're talking about, this professional loser, having to lose in order to actually get better at something, as you start to believe in that process, you see it for yourself with firsthand experience. You see yourself getting better. And like you said, it's all relative. So, it's also a mindset of like, you can't be constantly, oh, the glass is half full, the glass is half full, the glass is half full. You have to be the opposite. You have to learn to reframe things. You have to learn to be like you said, yeah, I got tapped out, but it took Greg 3 minutes, to tap me out, whereas it took him 30 seconds before. And so it's just getting that mindset of like things are relative and finding the victories in those moments. And yeah, I was harder to kill today than I was last week. And I think that belief in the process is how you become this professional loser and you see the value in it. And then, yeah, it just comes from your own experiences.
Yeah. I'm going to just echo a couple things you said because I believe your number one thing that you stated was faith. And I'll just share my experience with it. I agree 100%. Here's the thing. As my instructors constantly, they just always, it was like, you're going to lose. Here's your loss. Here's your loss. They're just feeding me fucking losses. And there's nothing I can do about it. What separated it for me was exactly what you said. They fucking cared. It was crystal clear from the beginning that they cared so deeply. Like they wanted me to get good. They wanted me to fucking survive. Like they were so invested and so attached to my journey. You know what I mean? Like the only way I can describe this is it's like, I've heard, I'll just go this way, but it's like if you had a family member and you knew that in 5 days, your family member was going to have to fight for their life and the lives of their family. They're going to have to face overwhelming odds, outgunned, outmanned, and they were going to have to fight for theirs and their family's survival. And you had 5 fucking days. You're not going to sit there and blow smoke up their ass. You're not going to fucking wrap them in bubble wrap and sugarcoat them and carrot and stick them. You get what I mean? You're going to have to be like, you're going to be hard because their fucking life depends on it. And it's like, there's no time for filler. Mm-hmm. Like, get over yourself. Put your ego aside. There's no time for trophies and adoration and celebrations. Like there's no time. And what makes that palatable was when you can feel every loss they hand you, every time they press you. Pressure is what creates diamonds. Every time they do that, no matter how fucking mean or how overwhelming or whatever it felt, what was always there in greater capacity was the fucking feeling that they fucking cared. Like they fucking loved you. Like they wanted this for you desperately. They became that connected to you. And that's the one thing that's a massive barrier that stops this shit from mind fucking you. Because when you have somebody that is they're not just feeding you a loss, they're feeding you negativity. They're purposely trying to destroy your self-image. Matter of fact, they're threatened by you. So you think you're going to be as good as me? Fuck you, and they beat you down. That is totally fucking different. So your number one thing of faith, I agree with 100%, and that was my experience of that, is that they fucking cared. I'm going to throw out my second thing, and then I'm going to let you give your feedback off that. And the second thing that is a barrier between the physical losing and how it doesn't affect your mindset is focus. I've said this before, so I'll make it quick, then Dustin, you add your thoughts on it. They cared, and they always, they never let me forget what the end state was. What's the end game here? And I'll pass it off to you after this. Everyone has heard this quote: "The more you bleed in training, the less you bleed in combat." Well, what the fuck does that mean? If you're training for, they would say, no matter how hard I am on you, no matter how unrelenting and unforgiving I am on you, remember, here's why I did it. Here's how I did it. Here's how you defend it. So, you got to fucking grow. Always at the end of it, they said, remember, this is because when you hit that crucible moment, that righteous fight, they don't give a fuck about you. They don't care about you. They're not going to go gentle on you. So the more you bleed here, the more you lose here, the more that we can be just fucking, let's deal with the brutal truth, the less you're going to bleed in combat. So they knew that. So there was a focus on the big picture. Here's what you're here for. This is not about you and me. There's no ego in this. This is about some fucking violent predator out there who wants to try to victimize you. Let's never lose focus. So how did that sit into your experience?
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think there's a seriousness to it. And I think that's something we've always brought to it. Speaking it from the training side of things, we've always treated it very seriously. When we walk in the door to train, we're not there to chit chat and just BS and kind of exercise, work out a little bit, do this, do that. Like, no, look, everybody's there for a very specific goal and purpose. Mm-hmm. And the second you start, you start staging, and then you train till it's done. And then when it's done, then you have that side of the culture, which is still super important, but it's not mixed in. It's not integrated that way. It's like when you're in that moment of training, it's done with the absolute utmost seriousness because of what you just said, because of that. Why are we here? What's the end game here? What's the end state of this? Is like, it's life and death. So don't ever forget it. Do you know what I mean? And early on, like way back, in year 1 and 2, I remember, like, because back then we did some group class stuff. I remember certain group classes where, like, if that culture wasn't being molded properly, that training session took a turn. Yeah. All of a sudden it was straight blasting back and forth across that gym every time you hit those sticks. And you did it to the point where people were getting physically ill because they were so exhausted. And that wasn't to torture people. That wasn't for your own kind of sinister, sadistic, like, haha, watch this. It was like, this is serious. Like, you guys if you forget why you're here, let me remind you. And the reason is exactly what you said, because you cared. Yep. You saw your job as like, I need to help these people prepare to save their own lives. Mm-hmm. So if they can't take it seriously, then I'm going to get them there, one way or another.
Yeah, there's a tremendous amount of humor and laughter and good-heartedness in what we do. Obviously, this is what makes it enjoyable. Otherwise, people wouldn't be here for our clients. Over 80% of our clients have been here for fucking almost 2 decades or more. Like, they don't stay because it's fucking horrific and horrible and no fun. But the point is, why they stay is because when it's time to punch in and go to work, it's exactly what we do. It's modeled after the same way they do with special forces. When it's time to fucking train, when it's time to be fucking serious. When it's time to relax and blow off steam, do that seriously. Like, we go all in on both sides of this thing. But here's the thing: we have been trained to recognize what moment is what.
Yeah, exactly. There's a time and a place.
There's a time and a place for it, and you recognize where the time and the place is. And if you're trying to be the class clown when it's not appropriate, then that gets corrected. And it gets corrected because this is life and death. And when someone's not focused in that, they learn a lesson. They eat a loss. That's just the way that it is. Same way that it's going to be in real life. And the second that moment is past and it's time to fucking, laugh and screw around and play and all that other shit, then we do that all fucking in. I mean, and that kind of brings me to my third thing, which is we're talking specifically about how can you lose all the time and not have that impact your self-image and not see yourself as a loser, not be defeated, demoralized, depressed, I suck, all that other bullshit. Matter of fact, it feeds and takes you the opposite way. You see yourself as fucking bulletproof. You get off on how badass you fucking are because you're not afraid of losing. You're not afraid of the risk. You're learning to throttle the fear in your life. You know, are you threatened or are you challenged? It's that switch. When you lose all the time and you're professional at it and you fucking understand it and you have this separation between, you know, losing and your self-image, you're challenged all the fucking time. You fucking love the challenge of it. You can't be beaten. They can't break you mentally. They can beat you physically, they can't break you mentally. Right? That's a mental toughness, and that comes from culture, not from technique. That comes from culture. So my third one is tribe. The first was faith. They fucking care. The second is focus. Never forget what the ultimate end crucible righteous moment is that you're preparing for. And then tribe. And tribe is trust and respect. And we've already been touching on this. But if you don't trust the people you're training with, if you don't have a brotherhood of people that are like-minded, then you don't share your weaknesses. They find out something in you and they hide it. They don't tell you, say, listen, I'm catching you on this every time. Shore that shit up. Fucking let's matter of fact, you need to come in tomorrow and me and you, I'm going to show you how I'm getting you. Why? Because I'm getting you. And if I can get you, then that doesn't help me. So I'm going to help you until I cannot get you this way. Say, well, geez, you're taking away your easiest path to victory. You're fucking right, I am, because I'm an explorer. I got to figure out a different fucking path. Now I'm showing you how to stop me before I've even figured out another way to do it. So this could make you better than me. This could bring you up and put you on par with me. Yes, it could. And yet we fucking do it. People have to fucking care about you because it's not us versus us. The competitiveness is not in the tribe. Mm-hmm. The competitiveness is against the fucking people that are willing to fucking murder you and your family. So we fucking tax each other. We push each other. But you have to have a deep level of trust and fucking respect. And that's earned. That's not taught or gained through technique. That you don't get that just by training together. You get that by all the other parts that build culture. Matter of fact, you get that by breaking bread together. You get that by spending social time together. You get that by talking about your core values and beliefs and integration of families. Like it's brotherhood, it's tribe. And that part has to be fostered with as much intensity as the training does, if not more so. I've seen guys that I know for fact were not physically the best. They didn't have the best attributes. They didn't have the same amount of training hours in. They didn't have the same depth of experience. But I'll tell you what, because we built the bond and they were so deeply connected to a ethos of warriorship and that connected to being a protector, I've seen them and we've have those guys that have been and faced real world crucible experiences with violence, and they have fucking dominated it. And a large part of that fuel came from their fucking mindset. It's just like they had this mental toughness. They were fucking bulletproof. They had an indomitable fucking, I'm going to fuck you up attitude. Because even though that they were alone in those situations, they weren't alone. Your self-image, you become who you surround yourself with. And yet you think that's not an integral part of training? The value in belonging, finding a group of people that will openly accept you, welcome you in, and they don't give a fuck about anything else. They don't give a fuck about your attributes. All they care about is that you share a belief in wanting to defend your right to life, your family, yourself from violent predators, and then they fucking go to work. They invest in you. They care about you. They focus you. And they show you and teach you how to build, gain, and give respect. So, for you, how is tribe?
Yeah, you touched on, the idea of other, let's say, like whether it's, competitive combat sports or martial arts or whatever. And a lot of times in those cultures, you talked about how it was very competitive. There's a lot of ego, and we don't have that. We don't have the competitiveness, not in that way. We don't have the ego. And what hit me though is I'm like, well, what do we have? I'm like, we have envy. And what I mean by that is let's say you get these newer guys coming in, and we joke because, to us, newer sometimes means someone who's been doing it for 10 years, but, and sometimes it's someone doing it for 3 years or 4 years or 5 years, and we still call them the new guy. But, you get these new guys come in and they look at people who've been around for a really long time, and then they envy that, which makes sense. It's like, oh yeah, that's awesome. I want to be able to do what they want to do. And we've all been that way too. But what's interesting about our culture is when you flip it and you look at guys like you and me and Brad and Ryan, everyone who's been around for a really long time, we all envy the new guys. And people might be like, why? Including the new guys. And but where we're envious is we look at them and go, man, I am so envious of how good you're going to get and how fast you're going to do it. Because it's going to be faster than me. And it's going to be faster than you. Because I was faster than you. They're going to be faster than me. Yeah. And the reason is because everything we're talking about is because when we're passing on the knowledge, we're willing to give people everything. We don't hold anything back because there is no ego, there is no competition. Yeah. Because we truly embrace the idea that if I give you everything I can and I get you better quicker, that's going to force me to get better quicker. Yeah. So the only way I can get better is to get you better. And because we embrace it, they get better way quicker than we ever did. Do you know what I mean? The training gets better, everything gets better. And so you have this back and forth envy instead of ego. And I just think, I don't know, I've never thought about that before, but it fits in with exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, 100%. It's super well said and a great way to look at that for people. Because you can see how it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. The only way I can get, I need to tell people how to beat me. I need to have people that I trust, and everything you just said, and that they get better, I get better, and we just keep feeding off each other. And because again, it's not about us; it's us against them. It's us against them, right? And the second somebody comes in and is committed, it's us versus them, and we all become one part of the same team, right? The same movement, the same passion, the same focus. Yeah. And the last thing that sorry, yeah, exactly.
Sorry, I was just going to say, all I was going to say is like tribe is such a big one because I think there's so much you could say about it. Yeah. I'll just highlight what you did say about like saturation. You are who you surround yourself with. Yeah. And I think that's just massive. And I think that says a lot. Yeah. It's like, who do you want to be? Well, put yourself around the people you want to be like, and that's what you will become. Yeah. Les Brown has a couple lines where he says, where it's like, if you're the smartest one in your group, it's time to get a new group kind of thing. Yeah. And then the other one is like, if you're standing around with 9 broke people, you're going to be number 10. Yeah. And it's like, but it's true, right? And it goes both ways, good and bad. Yeah. So it's like, you got to be very careful who you're around because it is that powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll just touch on, because I learned this very early on, and I freely tell people this, that nobody pays me for information. Like, although I have information that a lot of people don't know, information that's not easy to find because it's so specific to violence. It's not, it's not general knowledge, and there's not schools and people that know this stuff on every corner like there is MMA and everything else. But nobody pays for information because information is out there, and information isn't what makes the difference. What people pay for and what is invaluable is implementation. It's how do you actually implement this, which is where functionalism exists. And implementation, you cannot put a price tag on tribe. You're around those people, and the work, they're doing all the heavy lifting for you. Mm-hmm. Because, like you said, you surround yourself with. And I've seen people come in and then resist or try to operate on the fringes of the tribe, like not wanting to they don't understand the power that comes with that and how big a role that plays in your development. And you can't exist. It's like as humans, our species, we're tribal. We cannot do shit on our own. To a degree we can, but you get what I mean. We are tribal. Mm-hmm. We're the most social creatures on the planet. You need a tribe. Okay. And the last one I was going to say too, that helps us protect our self-image when you're constantly losing and build the right warrior mindset is the benchmarks. And you already mentioned this. When you're always losing, it's not without its small benchmark victories. like somebody, like everyone is always saying, listen, like here's the loss. I'm feeding you a fucking loss. I'm not here to hold your fucking hand. I'll show you. I'll teach you. But I'm not going to hold your fucking hand. I'm not going to coddle you. I'm not your fucking wet nurse. I'm going to show you, and you're going to experience this loss, because if you can't take it in here, it'll kill you out there. But you can take it here. Why? Because understand that as I'm doing this, I care deeply about your fucking journey here. So I'm going to feed this to you. And you're not going to whine. You're not going to bitch. You're not going to get down on yourself. You're not going to get fucking depressed. You're not going to see yourself negatively, because we're going to stay focused on what the end goal is. And I'm going to show you exactly what the fuck I did. And I'm going to teach you every step of the way. I'll fucking put however many hours into you. I am invested in your journey. I will show you how to stop this loss from ever happening again. And the second that loss stops, you're going to get hit with another fucking loss, and then another loss. And I'm going to keep repeating this fucking process. And then one day you're gonna come in, and the loss you took last week cannot happen to you again. It stops, and that's the little benchmark. You're like, fuck, that guy stopped getting me in this. They stopped entering me in this. That this stopped happening. I finally did it. I fucking got him in a linear lockdown. I worked that strategy. And even if someone gets you in something again, they didn't get you in it again because you know exactly what happened. You know, that's just the way it unfolded that time. You get what I mean? But you get this little benchmark. But the second you get the benchmark, that's enough for you. Nobody needs to stop. Like you might get a fucking high five. You might get a like, fuck, that was nice. And you see the wheels turning and the guy going, all right, time to change the game then. Motherfucker's getting crafty, aren't you? You cunning son of a bitch. All right, they acknowledge it, and then it's right back to going, all right, now let's move to this loss. But that benchmark, you learn to recognize growth. Mm-hmm. And you get what I mean? It's like, to me, I was taught to recognize my growth and not wait for the celebration. And I just was like, let's get back to work. You know, it's so interesting. I saw a thing the other day, and it was an old video, right? But this guy, it was in the Olympics, whatever, right? He won a gold medal. And they were just interviewing him. And they said, oh, you won, and all these years of hard work, and all this, and all this, and all this. And what are you going to do now? And almost all, oh, I'm going to relax now. It was such a hard dedication, this and that. And it was fucking awesome, because the guy's like, I'm going to get a night's sleep, fly home in a couple of days, and right back to the fucking gym. Start training for there's 4 years, it's coming again. Like, it was like, the victory, the gold medal was like, yes, was it significant? But it's almost like, when my career's done, I'll look back and celebrate that shit. But right now, he was in love with the process. It was like, the win's the win, but it's the work. He just couldn't wait to get back to work, being pushed. You know what I mean? Yeah. Grow stronger, grow faster.
Without the work, the win wouldn't mean anything. Even if you wanted to celebrate it, you couldn't. You couldn't appreciate it if it took no work to get there.
100%. Yeah.
Right? No sacrifice. Well, it wouldn't mean anything.
Yeah. Here's the last piece, and then we're going to wrap this up. We said at the beginning that you have to understand that what we are training for is the highest stakes poker. It's life and death. It's the crucible fucking moment. If you can't lose. If you lose, somebody dies. Somebody's murdered. Somebody's severely injured. Right? Violence is when you're facing imminent grievous bodily harm or death. That means that if you fail, imminent grievous bodily harm or death occurs. That's what we're training for. So you don't get a bad day. Now here's the thing. It's the tenacity, the relentlessness to keep training and preparing, even though your righteous fight has not come yet. You see, you train for the Olympics happen. Mm-hmm. They happen. They happen every 4 years. Now maybe COVID or something like that knocks that out, but they happen. But your righteous fight doesn't come year one of your training. Be thankful, because you get another year. Doesn't come your second year. Doesn't come your fifth year. Can you still keep losing, keep training, keep preparing, keep focused, keep the faith? Can you still do that after 7 years, after 10 years, after 15 years, after 20 years? Can you still do it? Now, here's the best part of this, is that everything that you're training and growing and learning is not solely applicable to violence. It permeates into every fucking aspect of your life. It's the fucking core of your essence. You are living as a warrior, as a protector. It's like the certainty, the confidence, the mental, the toughness, all of the stuff that comes from it. the benefits you get are almost all, like they're 99% of the benefits exist outside of the righteous moment. Isn't that weird to say? Go ahead.
Here's the thing for me, it's like you're talking about the ultimate problem. Someone's trying to take your life or your family's life. There's no worse problem. It doesn't exist. So what skill sets do you need to handle that type of problem, to handle someone trying to take your life? Well, guess what? Those skill sets appear in every problem in your life, just to varying degrees. So, I mean, that's, I think, just to help people understand, well, how does it apply to my life? Because it's just problems. And we're taking the absolute worst problem you could ever face and then just applying the same skill sets to all the smaller problems we face. And it gives you one hell of a perspective too. Because you talk about reframing things, and it's like you look at violence and just be like, whatever problem you have, it's nothing when you've actually, either literally faced it or, in your mental theater of your mind faced it. It's like nothing can even touch violence as far as a problem goes. So then all of a sudden it's just like, oh yeah, this is nothing. I can deal with this.
Yeah, it's 100%. And I'm just going to throw up a few comments here that we've had. I know my mic's starting to crack a bit here too, so we're going to get ready to wrap it up. But Sprack, you threw up a couple in the beginning, but don't fear failure in great attempts. It is glorious even to fail, a quote by Bruce Lee. And then you went on to say that when you're always successful, what do you actually learn? Failure is what creates growth. That's 100%. And you threw up a powerful statement: the more you bleed in training, the less you bleed in combat. And then a last one here from Rich and Air: to learn to enjoy the work more than the victory is the essence of true greatness. And it's a good one to end on. I couldn't agree more with it. And like I said, I know my mic's starting to crack a bit, so we'll wrap up. But yeah, I wouldn't change it. I love losing. I love that I have a culture, a process that will never let me stop losing, which means they'll never let me stop growing. I love having the focus of an ultimate righteous fight that I know is waiting for me out there. The warrior's death, the warrior's challenge. And like you said, life is not fucking easy. And but what's life going to throw at you that you can't handle when you're preparing for that ultimate crucible experience? So anyways, that's a little look into how our culture approaches losing, and I think there's a lot of value in that. So hopefully we added value to anyone that's listening to this. And that's it. Dustin, any final thoughts?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay, let's wrap up before my mic it heats up sometimes and starts to crackle. So we'll kill it here. All right, thank you guys so much for joining us. As always, we're here every Thursday night. Brad will be back. Coach Brad will be back this next Thursday. Stay safe, stay weaponized. We're going to chat again soon, everybody.